Hey, what's up? This is Voxite, and in this video I will show you everything you need to know about this template and how to edit and everything else you might need to know in order to use this project. So first I will be talking about the 3D segments, which are the most well, it's not really hard, but they're the most complex parts of this project that you have to edit. So let's get started right away. Here I am inside the project file, and here you have in this project window you will have a folder with segments, and then a second folder with other, which contains the assets, pre-comps and solids, and you really don't have to worry about this folder right here. And then I have three files that I've imported, and these won't be in the project that you will be receiving. These I've imported just for the sake of this tutorial to use them as an example. Alright, so if I go in the segments folder, here you will start with background. And if I go inside the background composition over here, so double click, this is the composition that will show up, and this will be the background segment. And here you have a color layer, and all of the segments have a color layer inside the composition. And if I click the color layer and go to effect controls, and if you don't have this window effect controls, just press F3 and this will pop it open. And here you have some color controls. Alright, and if I go ahead and change these colors, you can see how you can change the look of your composition. And then we have a bunch of different colors for the different elements that make up the compositions. Alright, so background particles, you can see them here in the back. Ball particles 1. Alright, and then we have the second particles, these sort of streams that swirl around the ball. Alright, and then we have a highlight. So you can kind of get the idea of how to change the color. Alright, so this is the background segment. So most of these segments follow the same color correction settings. Alright, and if I go inside opener, for example, let's take a look at opener, because this is the most advanced one. So inside opener you will have a render folder. Alright, and inside the render folder you can double click and this will pop up the opener comp. Alright, so this is the composition that you will use to render. And here again you can see that you have a colors layer. Alright, and if I go to effect controls, you can see that this has a bunch of different layers. So let's take a look at some of these. Let's choose a frame here. Let's go in the beginning. So stadium lights, alright, will be the lights here in the back, and let's change those. Alright, and it's very important to experiment with the color a bit. Some colors look a lot better if you add a little white to them. So if I move this cursor over to the white, you kind of get a just a way better result. Alright, stadium effects will be these dots here, which appear in some scenes. Change the color of those. Then we have our arrows. Change those as well. Let's move forward. Let's see, game day. Alright, so here we have a screen, so we choose the color for the screens. Then we have this text color can be chosen by text 1. Right, change that. Screens 2, let's see, screens 2 actually we'll get to that in a second. We have a lights front, so you can change the color for the lights in the back for the stadium. And then some compositions or scenes have lights in the front as well, so lights front, change that. Alright, and let's take a look at screens 2. Let's move a few frames forward. Give it a second, let's move here. Alright, so screens 2 will be these lights here. For the transition, change the color for those. Let's take a look. Alright, most of the settings are covered here. And again, here as well. Alright, so now we have a helmet. You can change the color of the helmet. Let's choose a different angle. Change the color of the helmet. Alright, let's see, ball effects 1 and 2. Ball effects 1, you can see it here, and 2. Change the color for those. And you can see here, for example, if I add a little bit more white, you might get more pleasant looking results. So just keep that in mind. And then at the end, we have our end explosion. So you can change the particle for those. Let's choose a nice frame here. Alright, and choose the color for that. So you can kind of get the idea. So this is the opener. Let's take a look. Most of these settings are pretty much exactly the same. So I'm just going to show you another one. For example, double bumper. Let's go to our render folder, double click. So this is the composition used for rendering. And by the way, everything except the opener has alpha transitions. So if I choose a frame here, you can see that this has transparency here. Just this will be to ensure smooth transitions between clips. And just make sure that when you create a render, so when you go to composition, pre-render, just make sure inside custom AV here, you select a format. You can go with AV. Just make sure RGB plus alpha is enabled. So this is by default set to RGB. So just make sure this is set to RGB plus alpha. All right, and this will render it with this transparency information, so you can edit it properly in your actual projects. All right, so let's take a look at the colors here. Color layer. All right, we have a light, some lights in the back, lights in the front. Change the color for those. Let's see, we have for the cable as well, the highlight of the cable, you can change the color for that. And let's see, then we have a screen, right? So the background for the screen, and then we can also affect the color for the screen effects. So these highlights here, let's take a look. So here you can see, as I move the cursor around, different values of the same color, how this changes and affects the final result. All right, so let's say, for example, these lights here, the volumetric lights, are a bit too bright. You can change the color. You can maybe drag this down a bit and just tone it down a bit, and maybe this will ensure a more pleasant looking result. Right, so that's pretty much it for the colors. All of these compositions have the same colors, more or less. Let's take a look at the how to actually change the logos and the medias. Let's go back inside our opener, and for our opener, all right, so all of these segments have an edit folder aside from the render folder. So inside the edit folder will be all the compositions that contain the logos and the clips and everything. So for example, in the opener, which has the most compositions to edit, here in our edit we have a helmet logo. So this will be the logo here at the end where the helmet is. Let's take a look at the frame. Alright, so this guy here, you can double click inside it, and here you can simply just replace this logo with your new logo. So I will go ahead and delete this logo, and I'll just drag my new logo, and then you can select the logo, press S for scale and rescale and readjust. And if I go back inside opener, you should see this updated. Let's take a look at another frame. Alright, so you can see it updating here. And let's take a look at opener end logo. Will be this guy at the end over here. So change that as well. Do the same thing, rescale and delete the previous one. And now if I go back, you can see it updated here. Ultimate Football, the way you change this text will be opener end text. Alright, select open up this composition. You can double click this text here and change it like that. So let's see, new text here. And if I go back inside the opener, here you can see it updated. Let's take a look at another frames here. Alright, so this guy here will be opener holder 1, and again this is a text layer. Of course you can use a logo layer as well. So for example, if I grab a logo, and you can make some complex compositions, and this will update in the final result. Alright, so if I go back, you can kind of see how this works. Let's see, let's take a look at another frame. The next one will be opener holder 2, and you can go ahead and delete this placeholder comp that I have selected here, and delete this, and import your video or your image. This also works with image, of course. Alright, and if I go back, you can see your video here. Let's take a look at what else we have here. Alright, we have logo left and logo right, and these are the last two ones that we have for the opener. So logo left, again same thing, just delete the layers that are there, and just simply place your logo, and this will update in the final composition. And the same thing goes for logo right. Alright, let's take a look at a few more. Let's take a look at the double bumper. So double click the render comp, and if I go inside edit, you will have a logo left and a logo right, and you pretty much do the same thing here. Just import your new logo, delete the previous one, and then if you go back, you can see this updated. Let's actually change the right one, and hopefully you get the idea. Alright, and all of the changes you make inside these compositions will affect the final result. So if I make them smaller here, of course they will be smaller inside the final render comp. So these are pretty much all of the settings that you need to worry about. Just one more thing, inside the player edit folder, so this is the render for the player composition or segment. Alright, here we have a player holder, which you can drop an image of your player. Just make sure that all of the images that you're using, except if it's a video, so all of the images that you're using for the logos and the player in this case will need to have alpha transparency. So if I enable transparency here, you can see that this is a PNG and has transparency in the background enabled, and this will ensure that you will have this nice background for the screens showing. Alright, so here you can replace it with an image of your player, or in this case I'm using a logo, but it works the same with any image. And for the text, this one's a little bit more complex, but really all you have to do is just double click the stats layer and then replace your text here. So let's take a look. Actually, let's delete this guy. Alright, so this is the stats layer, or you can just delete this entirely and make a new one. Alright, and player name, just change this. Alright, and then you have a logo image here, and for example, if you want to replace this, grab this layer here, delete, and then drag your new logo over the black solid layer. So make sure this is the fourth layer, and then you simply just reposition this in place. Press S for scale, rescale this, and make sure you make this more transparent, and just press D for opacity and drop down the opacity to maybe something like 35, and see how this looks in your composition. Alright, so maybe this is a little too visible. Maybe make this 25 opacity. This is a little better, or maybe even 15%. Alright, so this is how you edit the player, and all of the rest are basically have the same exact structure. So I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully I've covered everything that you need to know. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.